Long time no see. It's time for another video. This time, as you can see, I have made some paintings over the summer, mainly plein air paintings, and I plan to go over these things right here. So this summer, I traveled a lot, embarrassingly much. Um, so I went to the States, the Hudson River Fellowship kind of residency that I applied for in the spring and got in, and I spent 3 weeks painting landscapes with some amazing people. Um, in September, I also visited Spain, which I took a workshop with Jeremy Mann, who is a artist I admire, and it was great. In September, when I went to the workshop, the main goal was to actually push me as a painter to use paint, use mark making, all this kind of stuff to, let's say, emphasize all the things I observed in nature, and to see like what I can do with paint. You know, using different tools than brushes, using only single brushes, no brushes or even palette knives at all for some paintings. And yeah, things got weird, and I love some of the results, which I plan to do in the studio as well. I have some things brewing, and I think it's a more natural way for me to paint, actually, like use a lot more color, use different kinds of mark making and all that stuff. Um, Also went to Japan, didn't only painted one there because plein air painting is a bit tricky there. It's very crowded, and things are regulated so that you can't really just set up in the middle of the street. Someone will probably drive you off pretty quickly. So yeah, I didn't do plein air there. Only painted one scene from the hotel window, which was nice, and also actually an impromptu commission for an album art, which I painted in the hotel room, which was definitely an experience for sure. So yeah, also went to Italy in May to visit Florence and Milan. Florence mainly for the friends, and painted some there. And also Thessaloniki in Greece in April, which was a short trip, and didn't paint there at all. So basically what I have here is mainly from the States and Spain. And these are all listed, well, except for these things on here, which I will go through later. These are all listed on my website for sale now. But it's nicer to know a bit about the painting before you purchase, and also with the video you get some sense of scale as opposed to with just a single still on the website and all that stuff. So the main goal of this video is to sell all of these, so please buy them. On that note, let's do the first one. This one here is a rock scene, basically next to the Mediterranean Sea. It was on the beach area, Costa Brava, I think it's called, the general area there. And yeah, I was drawn to this kind of puddle with the very bright rock at the end of the sort of tunnel, or not the tunnel, but kind of a leading path with the puddle going in there. There were some deep, rich shadows around it, and I wanted to study it a little bit. So I painted some versions of it. I think the first one, being the most faithful, was the winner here. So I deemed this one, the best, and included in this sale. And some more rocks. This was painted in the mountains in Spain, and this was actually the second iteration of this painting. The first one, I really, again, tried to find everything in the picture, match the colors, find anything to be found. And with the next one, I tried to have fun, really emphasize the light on the rocks, and find what I liked from the first one to then, make a nicer picture, which this is one of my favorites for sure. I really like the effect, the texture on the rocks. It's not very, it would be hard to reproduce this one, let's say, because it was very spontaneous and, warmed up, relaxed from the first one. It was just about having fun, and I think it came out really, really nice. All right, so next up, I rearranged these to match the order of painting. This was the first painting I did in the workshop in Spain. The very first scene I picked, and the goal was to pick something that you would be able to paint multiple times. I didn't really know what I was getting into at the time, but I'm really happy I picked this scene because it definitely gave me some nice paintings over the day. This one mainly about the very light kind of backlit foliage in front of a tree, the sunlight effect and all this stuff. And yeah, this one was the first iteration. Again, the goal was to be kind of faithful to the colors and what I'm seeing, the composition and everything. Just keep it, very much the same as you're seeing, and try to, ease yourself into it. And then the second one, slightly different surface, slightly different feel. It was also about experimenting with the surfaces. There were paper panels, canvas panels, and just gesso panels, which this is on a gesso panel. This is the second one. The goal was to do the same thing again, but try to have more fun. Included a bit more color in the shadows. I feel like there's more like clear brush marks here. Try to sort of simplify and keep it more, let's say, graphic, I would say. I like this one a lot. The next one got a bit more weird. There was no white involved in using this, so basically the brightest pigment I had to use was yellow, and thus it has a very yellow cast to it, but I feel like it gives a very nice warm feeling to it. And yeah, this is definitely a nice iteration of the same composition. As you notice, I played with the composition a little bit as well, tilting the trees, moving them around in the frame a little bit, and seeing which one was the best, to my taste. There was a fourth one, actually, which was a huge mess, so I ended up scraping that. And after that, I made this one. So this one was no brushes allowed. It was only blue, green, and white that I was allowed to use for this, which is ultramarine, viridian, and white titanium. But the ground was first prepped with the gray mush I got from scraping the previous one and all the colors that I cleaned off the palette before. So there is this kind of warm gray undertone to it, which I didn't cover up intentionally fully because it gives a nice effect to it as well. And there's a lot of like variety, especially in textures and mark making in this one, which I feel like this one really sort of clicked something for me where I was like, okay, well, I can do all this kind of stuff and still have the painting look really nice at the end. So yeah, this was definitely success for me. This was the first one of the, let's say, wilder experiments during that workshop. Yeah, I feel like I got a lot, but this one was maybe the best one out of all these, let's say, more weird experiments. I'm happy the other ones happened, but they weren't really something that I could, put on display. So, but this one, in all its, difference, let's say, definitely one of my preferred ones from this. I would never have painted anything like this outdoors before, so definitely something that taught me a lesson. And the final one, a time limited one. Day was getting short at that point. We had to leave pretty soon, so the last one was basically just get it done as quickly as possible. And the end result, I think, also changing the colors because the sun was already starting to set and all this. I wanted a golden kind of hue to the painting, so I kind of switched the colors around a little bit. Already having painted this scene 5 times before, obviously I was a lot quicker in arranging the picture and knowing. I mean, at this point, I could have probably just not looked at the tree, which I did not do that much for this one. It was like borderline from memory already. So imagine spending like a full day just staring at these 2 trees. So at that point, it's pretty much ingrained already. But yeah, I like this one. It has very harmonious colors as well. So I took something from the first ones and maybe some from the yellow ones for this one, and tried to be very loose and free with the brush marks. And yeah, it's also a really nice picture, I think. Another one from the workshop. This is an experiment as well. I was kind of tired, maybe a bit heat exhausted and decaffeinated and all this kind of stuff that tends to happen when you're painting out in the sun all day. And yeah, I was really not feeling it. And Jeremy just told me maybe you could try something very thin and washy because you've been painting so thick all this time. So why not just flip it around and see what happens? And yeah, I wasn't really planning to even start this painting, but then I sat down and from the very sat down in a breezy spot. It was painted at the Hostalric Castle, which had this weird phenomenon happening where the wind kind of was very breezy in certain corners, and at the other spots it was just so still. So you kind of at the end of the afternoon you had to pick a spot where it was breezy because otherwise the heat was very exhausting. So I found a spot to sit at. I saw these rocks and just started doodling them in my sketchbook, and after doing that I actually started to feel like painting again. So then I ended up trying that sort of pseudo watercolor technique on this. The surface was toned beforehand, so that's kind of something I need to try again in the future, where try this watercolor technique without it being toned beforehand. As with, you know, real watercolor, you can really maintain the lights and all that stuff. That said, you know, oil paint tends to yellow a little bit, so I don't know if that would be an issue with the watercolor technique on using oil paint. So this one has a little bit of, you know, more paint in some places, very thin still, you know, in terms of let's say usually painting with oil, but some areas are kind of, you know, covered with paint, and some are very thin, like very washy, kind of almost just the ground colors here, and then the trees in the background are a little bit more, let's say, opaquely applied. So yeah, I think it's a nice little painting. It kind of feels a little bit dark maybe because the ground was stone, but it's definitely a successful experiment. This one of the sunsets I painted when I was at the Hudson River Fellowship. It's painted on the Hotchkiss School campus. There was a really nice hill overlooking a golf course where you could see like very far, basically, and you got the distant tree lines and the beautiful sunset. I like this one especially for the fact that it has the clouds in the sky. It creates so much variety, and yeah, that's a nice little painting, I think. I don't know. This is definitely up there in terms of the sunsets I painted during that trip. And this one, same spot, different day, less clouds, more focused on the real like luminosity of the sun. I try to capture it, you know, have it kind of glow a little bit so that the stuff in the middle of the tree line is a lot lighter than the sides here. Also trying to really look at the gradient of the sky and see how it's happening, capture the real colors that are there. And yeah, I think it's nice. The sun feels luminous, even though it's also very yellow, which is kind of hard because if you smack just white in the middle of the canvas, there's no color. It doesn't feel like the sun. So you have to find some balance between it being very bright colored and very bright in terms of value and the effect. So yeah, it's very tricky. Also, you have to make those decisions within, you know, the span of like 30 minutes or something for a scene like this, because the sun just goes down. Everything changes so quickly at that point. You can do like multiple small paintings during the sunset, which I will show you in a moment just to demonstrate how much those colors actually change. This one, slightly different, a little bit more impressionistic. The colors really were this crazy, I feel like. Maybe some of the, you know, greens and blues were a little bit pushed, but this is the feeling I got from the sunset. And yeah, this was painted on the deck at a cocktail party, I think the end of the first week. And yeah, the sun was just extremely red, and I was really having trouble capturing that. But yeah, this is kind of a more impressionist sunset kind of vibe to this. Also, maybe the wine I drank before this had a bit of an effect on the outcome. So let's just keep it to that. Also, the sun is very large in this one. Maybe that's also kind of contributing to the impressionist effect as opposed to the previous ones where it's very small. I don't know. I guess the small sun kind of gives a sense of scale, whereas this feels more zoomed in, if I can say so. This one, a simple cloud study. Painted this one with my actually feet and tripod in the water. And because it was such a hot day, it was like 35 degrees centigrade or something. And it was super sunny, you know, there were some clouds, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have painted this. But yeah, it was another day of those where, you know, you're already in the morning so exhausted from the heat that, you know, me being a Nordic guy just coming in from Finland, I think it was the, you know, the first or second week where I wasn't like fully acclimatized to the heat yet. So it was a bit rough for me. But this one, painted feet in the water in the shade from a very, very specific small spot I could actually stand in the shade in at the beach. So I had to like pick something to paint from there. That meant basically that I just couldn't find anything interesting in that specific spot, in that specific lighting, other than looking up in the sky, which, you know, I feel clouds are so nice to look at. It's very relaxing to paint them. And I hadn't really done a real like cloud study before, like really looking at the colors, trying to just nail the temperature shifts, you know, slightly warmer in the, you know, sunlit spots, slightly cooler but still warmer than the actual blue of the sky. Actually nailing the color of the blue of the sky is a bit tricky as well, just, you know, because gotta get the value and, you know, the hue right. and compare it to all the rest, and while the clouds are just shifting. So in general, cloud paintings are going to be a composite of what you see in the sky at certain moments, because sometimes when you're painting a cloud, you see something you like, you start mixing the color, you look up, and it's already gone. So you have to kind of um, remember things, interpret things, compose things. So it's very tricky. I would like to paint some more clouds at some point. Just maybe do like 10 of them in a row and see what happens. This one, also from the Hudson River Fellowship, another hot day. Just sat under the shade at the Fairfield Farm, which was a spot we painted in. Great views on all sides and very accessible from the lodgings. This one, I wanted this kind of graphic feel, low horizon, distant hills, study those without, including a whole bunch of stuff in the image. So I just made this kind of very graphic painting of the hill, studying the sunlit effect on that, and the blue of the sky, and including some clouds there. Just kind of, let's say, dividing up the image with the cloud. Yeah, I sort of enjoy this. It's a bit different, to the others, where it's a little bit more designy, but I think the colors are pretty faithful to nature, and I think they're beautiful. So yeah. As I said, I visited also Italy in May. This is from Florence, under Piazzale Michelangelo. There's the fountains there. There's multiple of these kind of overgrown, I don't know how it's called, but these things go like inside the wall, and the water flows from the very top. And we actually, when we painted this, the fountains weren't on, so we had to wait a little bit to get the water running before painting. I painted this with my friends there. I like this one. Yeah, maybe it's a bit dark as a painting, but it does capture the feeling of the actual, dark recess with the water flowing. So I kind of enjoy this one. Onto the larger ones. This is a multiple session study from the Hudson River Fellowship. Another one of those very hot mornings where when I started this, I had to escape into the woods, having shade and a bit of, running water cooling down the temperature a little bit next to me. So this was painted next to a stream where there were these beautiful rocks getting hit by the sun from between the tree trunks. So the light was shifting all the time. I had to kind of capture parts here and parts there as the sun moved around. And I wanted to really capture the warmth of the sun and the day, because yeah, definitely was feeling that at the time. Yeah, I think I painted three sessions on this. Sessions weren't too long, but yeah, I had it dry in between somewhat, so I could really layer the texture on the rocks and all that stuff freely without it turning into a gray mush. Yeah, so this one, first one of the bigger ones. First big one I painted. Well, big, quote unquote, bigger than the other ones. This one, a scene up looking from the lake at the Hudson River Fellowship, up towards the hill. And this was one of those things where you tend to kind of just look from one direction, and then you turn around and you see something you like. And yeah, it kind of surprised me to see it, but the downside of this painting was that it was actually painted on a pier. So I had to stay in the sunlight while painting this. It was going to be an overcast day, many days in a row, and I was really looking forward to it after, all the heat. But yeah, ended up all those days, it was just sunny anyway. It was just a couple clouds in the morning, and then it cleared up. So I ended up staying in the sun for like, many hours to paint this, just trying to survive with sunscreen. And I think I had to skip the afternoon because I was so exhausted from the heat after this. But yeah, I like the painting. It was one of the ones where I designed the painting a little bit more. I actually made some sketches beforehand, and made the drawing for the tree at the dorms from the sketches I made. Well, that ended up not so great. I had to fix the drawing as I was painting this, but at least I had something down beforehand. And the reason I made those sketches was because there was no time to actually paint that day, and also I think my easel was broke at that time, so I couldn't actually go out and paint. Yeah, so at the end of the fellowship, I actually borrowed an easel from a friend of mine, and that worked. It was a kind of a improvised thing, but allowed me to keep painting for the rest of the last week. I think it broke down like the one day of the last week. So pretty much the last week I had to kind of improvise a little bit. This one, a more impressionistic painting. I really wanted just to capture something, kind of middle to light key, and push the colors around a bit, create harmonies, like free myself up a little bit from what I was just seeing at the time. So yeah, it was a nice experiment. Lorenzo was painting this scene, and I really liked his painting, so I definitely just kind of ripped him off with this idea and tried to give it a try on my own. His painting is beautiful. I don't know how it ended up, if it's sold or not, but this one of my favorites in terms of colors, let's say. I really enjoy the harmony that is on this, where there's very purpley reds and these kind of light greens. Also in the distance, there's more blue greens as well as in the shadows. I feel it all kind of plays together pretty well. Yeah, I enjoy this way of painting. Last bigger one. This is actually from the dorm area, right in front of the dorm. There was this beautiful old tree, and I think a squirrel lived in it. This is one of the times where I was feeling a bit tired. 3 weeks painting all day, every day until sunset. You're bound to get those feelings sometimes. So I just kind of looked around very close to the dorm, so I could take a break if I needed to. And yeah, it was just like 30 meters from the front door, and I just sat and painted this tree trunk. I was really like honing on the texture and all this stuff, and yeah, and adjusted some of the background, and focused on the tree. And while I was painting this, also for I think 2 sessions, the squirrel that lived in there just the other session just came and stared at me for like 10 minutes, just switching spots in between when I was staring back. It was very funny. All right, so that's it for the actual paintings. But on top of this, I wanted to show some of these little studies I made just to kind of show you how you could practice plein air painting without committing to this full sort of paintings and compositions. So for some sunsets, I did this where I just made a small square and tried to capture something from the sky, a harmony I was seeing, a little mini composition, let's say, to capture some of these colors I was seeing that I liked. And things like this compared to this, they're definitely from like different stages of the sunset. So if you just paint one sunset of this size, you would have to commit to something of these, like as a single image. And like this, you can get to study all the colors that you see for the entire sort of duration of the sunset. And I think it's interesting. You can find a lot of ideas this way. Sunsets are limited, especially in Finland. So at this time of the year where it's gray all the time, I don't really get sunsets. So it would be a resource not to waste if I were to go out and paint the sunset now. Yeah, so there's a couple of these. This is another one where I feel like maybe this is the second one I did because I feel these are a little bit better, push the colors a little bit more. Especially love these harmonies with the reds going to the oranges and all these kind of gradations that are kind of tricky to see unless you're really looking for it. But they're beautiful and they're very fleeting as well. They also kind of move up while the sun is setting. So yeah, you have to kind of pick the right time to compose your image. This is another way we did this at the workshop with Jeremy Mann. These are limited to 4 strokes, no light when painting. So you basically just paint from the moment the sun starts to set, progress, and pick just some harmony you see in the sky and try to just put it down as accurately as possible. And then basically paint until you see nothing, which was this one. Just barely could make out the contrast between this dark and this lighter stuff. So that was the time to stop painting. Otherwise, it would have been kind of redundant. Also did some of these sort of sky iterations, one of those lazy feeling afternoons in the heat, just under a tree looking at the sky. And just trying to pick up something from the sky that I wasn't figuring out. Also true to plein air paintings, there's some bugs stuck to it. This one, maybe the second one after this first one, I did these both in the same afternoon. Just trying to push the warmth and the colors I was seeing. And I really enjoy these harmonies actually, like this. I put a lot more green into the blue I was using, which was ultramarine and viridian. And yeah, just this one especially, very kind of nostalgic, beautiful feeling with the cyan and the oranges in the clouds. This one a little bit more subdued, but I really enjoy the distance in this one, for example. Yeah, successes. And the final painting, maybe my favorite from the entire season. This very small one, I didn't include it in the sale, but really enjoyed the harmony. This was painted as a sunset painting in the Hudson River Fellowship. And yeah, I just love the harmonies of this painting. I tried turning it into a larger painting for the Hudson River Fellowship exhibition, but I couldn't really figure out the color harmonies and all that stuff quickly enough, let's say, for painting it for the show. But I think I might do it later. I have it started, but I still haven't figured out the sky fully yet. But we'll see if that happens or not. Um, anyways, I didn't put this up for sale because I kind of want to keep this myself. If you want to buy it, then just reach out to me. Maybe we'll figure something out. But yeah, I really enjoy this one. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a bit different, just me talking, going over these things. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or hit me up on Instagram. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one and have a nice day.